Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join the panel, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show, as sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, and this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. And we are joined by Sleeping Warrior. How are you doing, Sleeping Warrior? Good to have you.
All is good, all is good.
Excellent stuff. Missed you yesterday?
Yeah, I was doing housey things yesterday.
Housey things? Let's turn you up a little bit. You're a bit quiet. There we go.
Pulling out carpets, and the carpet man came on Sunday to do the job, but he wouldn't do the job because apparently we hadn't agreed that he was going to take the old carpets up, remove the carpets, and get rid of. Oh my God, it's 8:30 in the morning. Cover me.
Getting phone calls at 8:30 in the morning. Busy man. Crazy early. Normally do these shows a little bit later on a Wednesday because I've got a kiddie group that I go to in the morning, but I'll catch the last hour of it at the end of the show, I think. Do some shout outs. A couple of people in the chat. Hi Greg T, good to have you. DTB MPR, good to have you as well. Stopping traffic in my Rasta hat. Thank you for being here. Ryan Q Vincent, good to have you as well.
I'm back.
Goodness, this is early. Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, we had to. The guy came on Sunday evening basically to fit the carpets, but because we hadn't agreed that we were expecting him to remove the old carpets as part of the deal. Apparently not. Fitting carpets doesn't include the removal of the old carpets. It means that they fit new carpets. So he had to come back. So yesterday I had to go and remove all the old carpets, remove the underlay, remove the gripper rods, remove all the old tacks out the floor, all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure is part of his job, but apparently not. So that's what I had to do yesterday. He's now coming back on Monday. Can you believe that? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, we had this conversation yesterday. We're both in the same boat at the moment. We're both selling a deceased person's property, and in essence, it's not much fun, but ultimately speaking, we're having a very different experience. So I had carpets done throughout the house that I'm selling, and no problem at all. They came, they took the carpets, they took the grippers, they put it all down again, and off they went. It was nice and easy, but obviously not the case up north.
No, I think it's because the councils have got this stupid rule about the way that they allow commercial operators, like people that do carpets. They basically don't allow them in. I don't know what it's like for your local area, but for ours, they need permits, and they're only allowed one permit a month. So they encourage them to fill a van up and take the one whole van that's full. But obviously, people in certain industries can't do that. So I think that they pass the job back to you to make you do it. And I don't think it's any cheaper either. I think you got your carpets done cheaper than what we got our carpets done, and we've had to empty our carpets ourselves. It's ridiculous.
It's disgraceful.
Anyway,
it's all down to global warming.
Yeah. I didn't see most of the show yesterday, and I've not caught up with it because obviously there was an important football match on last night. For anybody that's interested, Liverpool beat Man City. Yippee! But anyway,
Hey, No
No
Globe.
Globe in the house.
Good to have you.
Good morning, No Globe.
Hey,
How are we?
guys. We're good. Give a shout out to my father.
Hey, Ruhif,
He
good to
passed
have you.
away yesterday at 9:15 in the evening.
Your dad died yesterday.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
What are you
sorry to
doing
hear
up
that.
in heaven?
yeah. The Lord took him. He was 85. He lived a longer life.
No way. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you for your condolences.
Ruhif, what are you doing here? It's not even dark yet.
It's like, what, 20 to 6? I've been asleep all afternoon. I had a great sleep.
Really? You're becoming nocturnal because of Oakley.
Exactly. I got to stop that.
Yeah, seriously, don't let that become a habit, because I did the same thing with the Americans a couple of years ago, and you end up just having the most ridiculous sleeping patterns. It's not fun.
Oh no, I've got to get up and get the kids ready anyway at 7 o'clock. So it's not a long term thing at all. I can't do it long term.
I'm glad you're here, Rue.
Glad you're here as well, Anthony.
I've got a bone to pick with you.
All right, there you go.
So if you're glad for me to be here too, is it because you got a bone to pick with me, or is it just because you like me?
I like you, and I have a question for you, or some research to do at least. Yeah.
Okay, so ask your question, and then we'll come back to mine in a bit.
All right. Birkeland currents. How can we detect the strength of it? How do we rule it out in terms of the Edbos effect?
Right, how do we detect the strength of it? Electromagnetic. Right, the Birkeland currents are an electromagnetic movement of charged particles. Anything that detects voltage or amperage or something of that nature will do it. I don't know exactly how they do it. It's not something that I'm overly familiar with. I just know that they are a thing, and I know that they influence pretty much everything on the planet, because even objects that don't have currents that are able to pass through them are affected by it because it forces the current around it. So they are important. They do stuff that, generally speaking, the ball earthers tend to ignore, but they are there. They are a thing, and they exist. Bit like the ley lines, they are there. They are a thing. They exist, but the ballers just refuse to address these things and think that they don't exist.
But I had a theory that if we had two calibration weights, one made of iron and one made of a completely non-magnetic material, should they weigh the same or should they weigh differently?
Well, if you got the mass to weigh the same, if you got their overall mass to weigh the same and then did the experiment, you would get fluctuations that were different between the two substances. I'm assuming you're referring to repeating the Etbos effect, yeah?
Yeah, even just measuring the weight at different latitudes, like what's his name? Wolfie did.
Yeah, but if you did it whilst traveling in an east and west direction, is that not what you're referring to?
It is, but there's also just the plain centrifugal force at different latitudes question as well.
Don't know about the centrifugal forces at different latitudes. I'm referring specifically to the Etbos effect, because for some reason this Etbos effect is a thing at the minute. The ballers all want to introduce this as a proof of a spinning globe. Well,
yeah, I only figured out what it was like I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something. I think it's awesome.
Sorry, can I just ask one of you? Someone in the chat, Greg T, says, "What is the Atmos effect?" So, if one of you can explain the Etbos effect, that'd be brilliant.
The Etbos effect. So it's EOTVOS. So the globe spins, 1 revolution per day. And at the equator, that works out to be 1,650 k's an hour or something. And that speed around the equator generates centrifugal force. If you are flying in a plane or something going west to east, then you are actually going faster than the Earth, and therefore the centrifugal force will be higher. If you go in the opposite direction, the centrifugal force will be less. So it's measuring the difference, basically.
Yeah, it's measuring the difference between the centrifugal force against the subject that you're observing. So the idea is if you're going with the spin of the Earth, you would have an increase in centrifugal force. Therefore, you would weigh less. If you're going against the spin of the Earth,
Wolfie did a video on it. 1 second. Wolfie Etbos. Yeah, he did an actual calibrated experiment. Go. I'll stick it in the.
Can you tell it? Can you verbalize it as well, Ruhif?
Oh, sorry, hang on.
If you can just tell the audience, thank you. I'll post it in the chat as well. But if you can just verbalize it, just so it's on.
Yeah,
it's nice and.
So
consistent.
he got some calibration weights and calibrated his scales against a 500-gram calibration weight at his latitude, with I think it was Perth, 31 degrees or something. So he kind of did 2 experiments in one. First of all, so he calibrates it in Perth. That's his starting base level calibration point. So the two experiments he did were to first of all fly west to east, increasing the speed of rotation relative to the Earth, and showed that the weight of that weighed much less than 500 grams. He then got to Sydney and got off the plane, and I forget which way he went. Let me just check where Sydney and Perth are.
You don't know where Sydney and Perth are. I'm English and I know where they are.
Latitude. So Perth is at 31.9 degrees south and Sydney's at 34, I think. Latitude 34, yeah. So he went from close to the equator to further away from the equator, which would mean that it should weigh more when he got to Sydney, I think. On the ground at Sydney. And that's his experiment. So he did two experiments in one, showing that calibration weight weighs differently depending on your latitude, and two, showed that the Eötvös effect, at least one way he showed it, from Perth to Sydney, decreases the weight. It's difficult to do on a plane because obviously you got the thing bumping around and sort of going up and down and yawing and pitching and rolling, whatever. But he did show pretty solidly that it is much lighter while you're traveling in that direction.
Much lighter.
Yeah, I think it's 497 grams or maybe less. Huh?
0.15 grams less.
That's on the ground. That's on the ground.
Now, if you're done, I could respond.
Yep. Yes, with Birkeland currents.
No, my first issue with that particular thing that Wolfie did was that nobody else seems to have done it. So it would need validating and verifying as true.
You'd need to give me a really good reason to go to Perth because it's a shithole.
Okay, well, I'm not done yet.
Is Perth not nice?
My second
sorry
issue
to distract
with
off your point. Is Perth not nice then?
No, it's no.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you carry on, Anthony.
Isn't Perth where all the expats go? Mind you, that's a different conversation. But anyway, so my first point is that he seems to be the only one that's ever done this in the whole entire history of manhood in the world. That seems to be the only evidence. So it would need more work. That's the minimum point that anybody really should acknowledge and accept, because it needs to be validated that this thing that he did wasn't a fluke, weirdness, or an anomaly based on his geographic environment that could be caused by other things, which leads me on to my second point, causation. How do we know that what he is demonstrating is caused by the spin of the Earth? He needs to do more work. But I do have evidence that directly conflicts with what Wolfie shows. Nathan, if you wouldn't mind presenting my screen.
Yeah, done.
Now, this for me is... Let me know when we're done.
Yeah, I see it.
Nath?
Yeah, Europe.
Okay. This is a centrifuge. And if you think about this in the context of the Earth, what this guy's doing is pouring muddy water into the test tubes. He's then going to present the test tubes into the centrifuge, and then he's going to use them to basically displace the dirt, in other words, the mud, from the water, which is lighter, and then he's doing it with some compound solution or whatever this is. I can't remember what he said this was, but the point is, a centrifuge will displace the heavier items, the heavier particles, the objects with more mass, and they will displace them outwards because of centrifuge. So
I've got a centrifuge, by the way, if you want to do some experiments.
Say again?
I actually have one. I have a centrifuge machine.
So great. So if you let me finish, then you can respond with why this doesn't match the world. You can give me the counter for this. But basically, this guy spins this up, and as you can expect, the heavier objects are centrifuged outwards. The lighter objects end up on the inside because of centrifuge. It's displacement. It's the heavier items are pushed to the outside, and the lighter items are presented on the inside. Now, if you think about this in the context of the Earth, the centrifuge would push all of the denser air particles away from the surface, and we would end up with the lightest layer of air, the least dense or the buoyant layer of air on the surface. And of course, we don't get that in real world. So you can see that if I just missed it there, I need to pause it there. So these would be the dense layer of air that we look through in our environment, but it's been centrifuged away from the surface of our Earth. So
You're
this
saying
proves
the density of the atmosphere should be higher as you gain in elevation
that
Yeah,
if the Earth
that's what
was
he's saying.
spinning,
Yeah.
at the equator. Yeah.
if the Earth was spinning, the densest layer of our atmosphere, our air, would not be on the surface. It would be centrifuged away from the surface, and we would have less dense air at the surface because of displacement. This is absolute proof that the Earth is not spinning.
Oh, absolute proof.
Yeah, the Earth is not spinning because we do not see this in the real world. We see
What's the opposing
layer of
force?
air is on the atmosphere, and that means we cannot be spinning because there is no centrifuge.
What's the opposing force?
The displacement.
No. What's keeping the atmosphere close to the Earth?
Oh, this fictional thing that you call gravity that you can't prove.
Yes.
Right. So what you're saying is that the gravity is the equal and opposite force to the centrifuge.
Not equal. Gravity's clearly stronger.
So what you're saying is that right. So therefore, can you prove gravity exists with some evidence of scientific proof? Arave?
Hey, Arif, how you doing? Is that you? I don't think so. Not at this time of the day.
To be brutal, I am satisfied with gravity existing by simply dropping something.
Right, but is that not displacement? It's the density of the object that you are dropping displaces the stuff around it that is less dense than what you're dropping.
What's the formula for density?
What does that matter?
Or how do you get a direction out of density?
You don't get a direction. A direction is a reference point that we give it. It's simply more dense.
Yeah, but how do you get from a density to a direction?
There is no direction. It's just
There is
more dense
direction.
or
It goes
less
down.
dense.
Yeah, but it goes down.
I've got to interject here, Anthony, because I'm just going to confess we've had this conversation, and I'm on Ruhif's side on this one. So just so you know,
That's okay. I can take on 2v1. Why do you? Let's go back to this down. What was you were spoke over by No Globe? What was the last thing you said?
Me?
Yeah.
So there's no direction to density. I mean, one
Correct.
thing can be more dense than the other, but how do you then say, oh, this one falls towards the center of the Earth or whatever?
It doesn't fall towards the center of the Earth. It's displaced by the more dense particle. The thing with more mass
but there's still
displaces
no.
the thing with less mass.
Yeah, but why? That doesn't come from density itself. There's no direction to density.
Well, there is evidence that the density itself is the operant force. There is no evidence that it's gravity doing anything.
Yeah, but we don't even. I don't even know if we disagree actually.
no, I
But
think you
density
are.
is just mass.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ruhif. What you're asking is, how does the density account for down? That's basically what you're saying, correct?
Yes, exactly.
And the answer is, it isn't down. Down is the word we give to it to describe our perception of the direction, but it
Totally
isn't a
disagree.
direction, it's a state.
Totally disagree.
It's more dense over less dense.
Hey, David, is that you? Can you say hello?
David Blackson is the one that was giving us all the problems the other day, isn't he?
Can't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah. He was the one that was joining and just going music in the background continuously. Hopefully, if you kicked him quickly then.
Well, just to cut a long story short, Anthony, would you subscribe to the idea that electromagnetic forces create down? Yes or no?
No, it's not a state called down. We call it down because it's a direction to us. In actual fact, it's a relative state to itself that is being influenced by its environment that is relative to itself.
Check out the flat earther using relativity. I love it.
Relative to itself, we perceive it as down. To itself, it is just a state of more dense or less dense, and it'll just displace based on that basis. If it's more dense, it'll go down to us. To it, it's more dense. If it's less dense, it'll go up to us, but to it becomes less dense. That's all it is. It's displacement.
See the bottom left recommended video there?
That one?
Yeah. I've got a centrifuge similar to that. It's like a 2 mil tube centrifuge.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what's your response to why this isn't what we see in the real world?
The force of gravity is stronger than the opposing centrifugal force.
But do you realize that gravity is lacking in evidence to prove that it is really a thing?
like I said, I know nothing about the Einsteinian version of relativity. For me, gravity is just what we call things that fall to the ground.
Which gravity are we talking about in your reference here, Rudy?
Newtonian. Just plain Newtonian.
Okay.
So basically, there's no comeback to this. There's not a response to this at this point. The Eötvös effect is claimed to be the centrifuge forcing the Earth to spin, or the Earth is spinning as a result of centrifuge. However, when we create a centrifuge, we see separation that puts the denser objects away from the surface because of centrifuge. But in the real world, the denser objects clearly sit on the horizon, on the dense layer that we can't see through because for whatever reason it messes with our horizon. So there is no comeback at this point, Ruhif.
Gravity is stronger than the centrifugal force.
But you have no proof that gravity is a thing.
We can measure its acceleration. We can measure the speed at which something can fall.
We can calculate it.
No, we can measure its acceleration.
Can't prove it exists. You can do some maths and claim that it's there.
No, we can observe how fast things fall and how much they increase their speed.
Oh, yeah,
and then you can theorise that that's gravity. I don't want this to go around in circles for 20 minutes. Yeah, it's an unproven theory.
Gravity's not my thing.
He can't account for down. You've got an unproven theory. That's where we're at.
Yeah, we're at. What evidence is there that you can contrast gravity over density?
I don't know. And to be honest, I don't really care. Like, as long as things fall to the ground, I'm going to call that gravity.
But I can prove that with a centrifuge, the denser objects go away from the surface of the Earth in this case. Yeah. This would push because of centrifuge, the densest layer of air would not sit on the surface.
What do you think the force? Right, have you calculated a centrifugal force on a centrifuge going like 6?
I'm showing you the evidence that a centrifuge pushes denser objects away from the surface.
But you've got forces going one way, and there is no centripetal force, no opposing centripetal force in this example.
Yes, there is the displacement of the lighter objects that are being pushed to the center.
No, that's how can I say that?
I think he's got you there.
No, centrifugal force is the weight. It's the centrifuge forces the denser object.
The net force.
The equal and
net
opposite
force
effect
applied by the centrifuge.
The equal and opposite effect is that the lighter objects go to the inside. So at the top of this test tube, there will be the lightest layer, the least dense layer. That's the equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, but there's no gravity pushing it towards the center.
Correct.
Yeah. Where in the real world, or at least our model of it, there is
no gravity pushing it towards the center. It's displaced by centrifuge, or not in the real world.
There's still a force. There is still a force pushing it towards the center.
But you're saying that force is almost entirely negated by gravity, right?
Yeah.
You're calculating the difference between a theoretical theory and this centrifugal force, correct?
Yeah, gravity is much stronger.
No, it's a theoretical theory that you're calculating it and saying that it's almost entirely negated.
Yeah, we've done these calculations on the show, haven't we?
Forget calculations. What evidence is there that proves that what you're saying is true?
Well, Wolfie's measurement of the calibration weight at different latitudes.
Yeah, and I said that I wasn't satisfied that he was showing causation. He wasn't showing that the cause of what he was observing was the rotation of the Earth. Because if the Earth was rotating, we can see that objects with greater mass are pushed outwards because of that force. We do not observe that in the real world.
Gravity is stronger.
Pardon?
Gravity is stronger.
But you can't prove that gravity is a thing.
No, I don't really have any interest in doing that either.
Well, you lose your point.
There is a force. There is a force, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it's caused by. We can measure the force in meters per second.
Yeah, well, that force that you're measuring, that you claim is gravity, is displacement.
Fine, you can call it that.
But if
whatever it is, it's an opposing force.
Thing. If you can't prove, if you need to distinguish and contrast gravity over density, if you can do that, and we can't do that unless we're in space, but if you can do that, then you win your point. If you can't do that, then you have to concede your point because you have no evidence to prove your assertion to be true.
No, I think you missed what I'm saying. I don't care what we call it. There is a force at 9.8 meters per second squared. Things fall down.
Yeah.
I don't care whether that's density or buoyancy, whatever it is, and yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, but that force, we are seeing that force by applying centrifuge. The same force displaces the density of this white stuff to the bottom of the test tube, and the lighter stuff goes to the top because of centrifuge.
There is in this centrifuge example, there is a much higher force pushing the particles to the outside, and there's basically zero force towards the inside.
I agree. It is a higher force, but the purpose of it being a higher force is to make the point that centrifuge pushes objects of mass away, not towards the surface. In the Earth's case, it would be away.
Yes.
So I agree it's a higher force, but it's for illustration purposes only. If the Earth was spinning and the atmosphere was spinning with the Earth, centrifuge would push the objects that had the greatest mass away from the surface. We do not see that in real world. Therefore, we cannot be seeing a spinning Earth.
Where in there did you somehow demonstrate that the centrifugal force is greater than the force of gravity, with air quotes, which you can't see?
By virtue of the fact that the objects with the greater mass appear on the bottom of the thing now. When the object is spinning, that's the answer to your question. When the object is spinning, the weight of these gets pushed to the outside.
Yeah, because the centrifugal force is greater than basically the zero force. There's no gravity in that centrifuge, right? There's nothing pushing it towards the center. Whereas on Earth, the gravity is huge and the centrifugal force is low.
No, the gravity point you have to prove. So your presupposition that gravity is is a thing you have to prove in any event. However, I've lost what you said then that I was responding to.
Sorry. Gravity, for the purpose of this conversation, gravity is the accelerated force things fall down due to.
No, we can see that the density of the object in the bottom of the test tube is the operant cause.
Sorry, the density of it.
We can see that the density of the white stuff in the tube at the bottom is the operant cause. That's why the bottom's there, because you can see it. The force of centrifuge is applied, and then you see the results of it directly.
What happens if you drop two objects in a vacuum chamber with different densities?
Right, this is deflection and obfuscation.
This is...
What would happen with it?
But there's zero resistance in a vacuum chamber, Ruhif. So if you're saying that...
Exactly.
Say again?
Exactly. This is exactly the point I'm trying to say.
Right. The reason why... So I don't get how the vacuum would affect this, given that we don't live in a vacuum.
With different densities, do they fall at the same rate, or does the more dense one fall faster?
Right. It's not about the rate of speed. It's about the displacement.
Correct. So if there's nothing at all to displace, yes, they'll both fall at the same time.
Yeah. But they're different densities.
Right, but there's nothing to displace. So when you've got a layer, if you've got water between a brick and a feather, and then you drop the feather and the brick on the water, then obviously the brick will sink quicker than the feather. If you remove all the water from the pool, suddenly they both fall at the same rate. Well, so what?
Yeah, why? Why do they fall at all?
Because there's no water there.
Yeah, why don't they go up?
Up is a direction that we give it.
Sure. Why don't... Still the question. Why don't they go up?
Good question.
Why don't what go up?
So in my pool example, Anthony, you've got a feather and a brick, and then you remove the water, and I say, well, you've removed the water, therefore they go at the same rate. So just taking it one step away from the vacuum chamber because it's more natural. But his question is, why don't they just go up? And that's a good question.
If the test tube was filled with a solution of some kind, and the solution was put in a vacuum, but there was displacement that was capable of happening by virtue of the ability to freely move, then it would go up and down. Like we call it up and down, but it would displace each other. The more dense object would appear towards the bottom, unless you did it in space and it didn't do that, and then gravity would be proven. But so far, we haven't seen any evidence to show that a centrifuge in space works.
Centrifuge in space will work. I can tell you that.
Well, we have to prove that they're in space for it to see that it's working, right?
I know. Do you want to talk about the ISS?
I'm talking about anything that goes into space to try and prove the point that gravity is there, because as far as we're concerned, space is a fiction. Space might be the final frontier, but it's built in a Hollywood basement.
What was that again? That was
Chili Peppers.
Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're ringing a bell.
So on the idea that space is this thing, I mean, if you can prove that space exists, I mean, that's a different topic, but I don't think that space exists the way we're told. If anything, it's a liquid by virtue of density and buoyancy. Gases
hold on.
are only...
Sorry, Anthony. So if we're using the vacuum chamber as an analogy for space, are we still using the same gravity?
It will be weaker out in space, but I mean, there's
Sorry,
still...
are we still using the same gravity? Because there's two different types, right?
Big G and little g.
Well, you tell me, which one are we using? On the ground, we used one. Are we still using the same gravity? Are we still using Newtonian gravity, or what are we using?
The little g of 9.8 is worked out from the big G gravitational constant, so there will still be gravity. I don't know what you'd calculate it to be.
So why have two then? If they're basically the same thing, why have two?
One defines the actual interaction between two masses. When you apply it to the Earth's mass, it becomes little g, 9.8.
So on screen right now,
I'm still a bit confused. So why have two?
They're not really two. It's not really two different things. There's big G, which is like the universal gravitational constant, nothing to do with Earth at all. But if you're on Earth, then you can work out, well, given the mass of the Earth, what your acceleration should be, or vice versa.
So big G doesn't apply to Earth?
Yeah, it does.
Sorry, you just said it absolutely. Sorry, just to repeat your words back to you. You said there's big G and it has absolutely nothing to do with Earth at all. And I've said, I've repeated back to you that statement. So big G has nothing to do with Earth at all. And you've said, oh yeah. So why the contradiction? I'm a bit confused. Why the contradiction?
No. Big G just relates one mass to another mass.
Is Earth a mass? Is Earth a mass?
Earth is a mass, yes.
So it applies to Earth then. Good. With you so far?
Yeah. Yep. And if we use Earth's mass, we work out the little g, which is 9.8 meters per second squared.
You're sharing, Anthony.
Here we go.
All right. So a citation from Quora. I think you guys tend to like Quora and Forbes.
I actually hate Quora because I can't do any more than 5 articles or something.
Is gravity a fictitious
Hold on, I want to get that in. Say that again, Ruhif.
I think they limit their articles to like 5 before you got to sign up or something.
Fair enough. Sorry, you carry on, Anthony.
Is gravity a fictitious force? How so? A fictitious force, also called a pseudo-force, D'Alembert force, or inertial force, is an apparent force that acts on all masses in non-inertial frame of reference, such as rotating reference frames. Let's forget about the bottom part of the sentence. Let's focus on the first bit. Can you tell me what these words mean? A fictitious force? Santa's a fictitious force, isn't he?
Centrifugal force is a
gravity
force.
We're talking about gravity.
Yeah, but you're asking what is a fictitious force?
No, I'm asking about what does fictitious force mean in the context of gravity?
I forget the actual definition of it. This is not a colloquial usage of the word fictitious. Can someone post in the chat what a fictitious force means in terms of like centrifugal?
I've got it on screen for you.
Yeah, that's like a standard dictionary definition. Well, centrifugal force is actually
your own definitions in science. Oh yeah, sorry, you do.
Well, there are definitions like the word theory means something different in science, and so does fictitious force
and all that nonsense to do with who cares what science says? Is gravity a real force or not? It appears, according to
Newtonian, I'd say absolutely yes.
Sorry, they're the same thing, though, are they not? Newtonian, Einsteinian, they're the same thing, right? Big G, little g, you've just gone through this. Same thing. They both apply to Earth.
I don't understand Einsteinian all that well at all.
Okay, but they're both. You've just detailed it enough to tell me that they're pretty much the same thing. They both apply to Earth. Earth being a mass, right?
Yeah, big G and little g.
They're the same thing, so we'll just call it gravity. Let's not worry about whether it's capitalized.
Well, they're different numbers.
So they are different. So when I asked why we've got two, they're different. Is that right?
They're different numbers.
So different then?
One doesn't have a mass in it.
So they're different. So they're not the same. So back to my original question. Why would we have two? Why would we have two different things? I'm a bit confused. one applicable on Earth, one applicable in space. If they're the same thing, but yet
No,
different.
they're applicable. Big G. Big G is applicable everywhere. Little G is applicable only to Earth.
Right, so big G is applicable everywhere. Why don't we'll just use big G then? Let's just ignore little g, because big G applies everywhere, and little g only applies in one very specific circumstance, doesn't it? So we could just ignore little g and just have big G, right?
We could ignore little g and use big G.
Excellent. Let's just ignore this then. So all of your answer was based on little g, correct?
On Earth, yeah.
Right, so we could just ignore all of what you've just explained then, in terms of your theory about non-existent forces that are pseudoscience.
How about we read the first line from Centrifugal Force on Wiki?
No. How about you tell us how real gravity is?
Like I said, I don't understand the whole Einsteinian gravity bending of space-time all that well. Barely at all.
Would you agree?
I treat gravity as Newtonian. Right?
Would you agree that generally the scientific consensus is that Einsteinian gravity did debunk Newtonian gravity?
I would disagree. Like, I think that's only a quantum effect. Okay. Newtonian gravity and Newtonian physics work on a macro scale, and we are talking fairly macro.
They might work, but when you say work, do you mean we can calculate it?
Yeah, calculate trajectories. That only
works mathematically, though, right?
Yeah, but then your mathematics reflects observations made in the real world.
Yeah, but when you do anything that's mathematical by reference to will it work, the answer is always theoretically yes. And we all know then you do observations between theoretically yes and actually yes.
Yeah, you do an observation. So you might calculate a trajectory and then see if that.
I don't disagree that you can calculate something. My question is, can you prove it exists?
You can test that prediction.
Let's just cut this to no.
Yeah.
Do we have to get into proof again?
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
That's absolutely what we require, Ruhif. Oh, man. Do we have to get into proving this stuff? Can't you just accept my assertion? I've got a really shiny white coat that's been washed in biz. Therefore, just accept what I say. No, Ruhif. We do require proof, absolutely unequivocally. That's the standard here. Proving things is necessary.
And in the scientific method, the closest you can get to proof is repeatedly demonstrating that your predictions match reality.
So, in the case of Wolfie, has he done that?
Well, he's made at least one experiment.
So, is that repeated or is that singular?
He's only done one. Yeah,
oh, right. So, when you've just defined what's necessary in science to repeat it systematically, Ruhif, he hasn't done that, mate.
He did at least 3 weights at different latitudes.
So, part of one experiment.
There's some bloke in a plane. They're not even on Earth.
Sure.
Excellent. Well, we swiftly did away with that little crap example. Thanks for that.
Let's do some more experiments to further validate the model then.
Let's not let you do the experiments.
Or just provide us the proof. Or maybe 2,000 years of acceptance of globe Earth would afford us a few experiments that are done already that we could go out and repeat and validate, as opposed to this singular thing that's been done in very, very recent times by Wolfie, a YouTuber.
Since YouTube, right?
Sorry, we've had the whole body of science backing the assertion we're on a ball for 2,000 years. You're telling me that the whole body of science hasn't got something that we can test and validate and repeat?
We've given you all the experiments that people have done over the years.
You haven't given me anything.
Don't trust that they've done them.
You have literally given me nothing. You haven't given me a damn thing. Literally not one thing.
But I can show you that the effect of a centrifuge on a system like what we're supposed to live in forces objects of density away from the surface, in this case, towards the outside edge. So in our world, we would not have the densest layer of air at the base. We would have the densest layer of air above us, and we would be in the lightest layer of air because of displacement.
No, because gravity is stronger than the centrifugal force.
Yeah, what we're going to get to each time this happens, Anthony, is we'll get a dogmatist asserting his dogma and just saying that he accepts it. So I'm happy to move on. I'm happy that Ruhif has a belief in gravity. He can't prove it, and he's happy to accept it, which is what he's told us. It's now the third time he's told you that.
At 9.8 meters
he's basically told you his dogmatic belief 3 times, Anthony, and asserted that he's happy to just believe it.
My turn to speak.
You've already said it 3 times. You've told us. You're just happy to accept gravity. You're happy to accept it. You've told us that 3 times now.
Do you accept things fall to the ground and accelerate?
Yeah, I accept things fall to the ground. I don't accept that gravity accounts for it. That's just your religion's belief.
You do accept acceleration. Do you accept acceleration?
Let's not extrapolate this. Let's have a test that's been done that we can repeat. What test have we got that's been validated scientifically? Yeah, that we can now go out and repeat and try and debunk. Is Wolfie all we've got?
Do you accept acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared?
Is Wolfie all we've got to validate? Because that's what you've presented. Anthony's ripped it a new one. Now we're trying to find out what else you've got. What 2,000 years has given us. Not what this recent YouTuber's done. What science done in the last 2,000 years to prove your assertion that you're happy to accept. And you've told us on 3 separate occasions you're happy to just accept it.
Is the acceleration towards the ground 9.8 meters per second squared? Yes or no?
In one example, quite possibly, where there is like free fall in an air. But in all other examples, it's going to be at a different rate because of displacement. You brought up evidence to support the idea. You brought up evidence.
Talking about terminal velocity?
You brought up evidence to support the idea that the Earth is spinning, and you cited Wolfie doing some experiment in a plane that's not even on the Earth. It's in the air. And you said that that proved the rotation of the Earth. I've brought up a proof of centrifuge that proves that the densest layer of matter will be pushed away from the surface.
When the centrifugal force
other than gravity, which you've got nothing to respond other than gravity, which you cannot prove. There is no proof, no scientific proof of gravity. It is theoretical by nature. And I brought up a response to that said that from Quora that said that gravity is a fictitious force.
Yeah, so let's read the first line of Wikipedia. In Newtonian mechanics, the centrifugal force is an inertial force, also called a fictitious or pseudo force, directed away from the axis of rotation.
Yeah, and let's read the bottom line where it says last updated by Joe Blogs on whatever date at whatever time.
Sure. There are moderators on Wikipedia, by the way.
Who cares? It's not exactly scientific, is it?
we seem to have a disagreement over what is and what isn't science, by the way.
Well, anybody can look at the bottom of this. Anybody can alter. Where is it?
Actually,
no, it's right at the bottom.
Is this page locked? Hang on.
Page locked. Anyway, the point with Wikipedia is that it can be altered by anybody. Correct?
Yeah, but it's also moderated.
So who cares? It can be altered by anybody.
Yeah, we've got peer review in science. So
Wikipedia is like a layman's.
So essentially, you brought up Wolfie. I countered. You countered with gravity. I countered with Quora. We seem to be at a point where you have nothing, and I've got the responses.
We can accept, surely, for the purposes of this conversation, we can just say gravity is acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared.
That's the 4th time you've said it. We can, we could, but we won't. Ruhif. Doesn't matter if you say it 7 times, 12 times. It does not matter how many times you doggedly assert
Let me know when I can speak, Nathan.
Well, yeah,
let me know when I can
speak. I'm telling you, you've said the same thing 4 times. So when you can speak, you've already said it. We can accept it if we just accept what you say, Ruhif. We're not. Yeah, we want proof. Oh my God, are we back to this proof thing again, Ruhif? Do I have to say this 4 times as a response? Yes, we're not just going to accept what you say. We could, as you assert, just accept what you say about gravity. We won't. We want you to prove it.
My turn? My turn. Okay. Do objects fall at an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared?
Is this a hypothesis?
No.
No, they don't.
How many times do you think that has been measured in the last couple hundred years?
Free fall in air, possibly. Do they fall when they're displaced in a liquid at the same rate?
Oh, dear.
No,
sorry,
they don't.
I missed your answer then.
No.
No, he didn't answer. Do they fall at that rate when they're in a liquid, Rue?
No, and why is that, Anthony?
Right, you tell me. Why is the gravitational constant not constant in that example?
The gravitational constant is, but you're getting resistance from the water.
Right, and you get
Exactly.
resistance from the air, but it's at a different
Yes.
rate. A vacuum chamber
It's-
proves
it's-
that.
Correct. It's less.
Right, so it's not
So a
gravity.
really good experiment.
The
A
resistance.
really good experiment then is to do it in a vacuum chamber, right?
Sorry, we're back to this. So, where's a vacuum chamber applicable to? Do we have vacuums on Earth, Ruhif?
We can create one.
Sorry,
To measure
do
the,
we have
to measure the
naturally
acceleration.
occurring vacuums?
Yeah, naturally occurring.
Why naturally occurring?
Because that's what you're trying to replicate. We're trying to replicate things that happen in the natural world. So, if you're saying
we're
that
trying
we've
to
got a
isolate.
natural
We're trying to
vacuum...
isolate gravity.
Sorry, if you're
trying
saying
to
we have a
isolate the
natural
acceleration.
vacuum on Earth, then it would be applicable. And we can use your little g, right? Because we're on Earth. However, if, on the other hand, we don't have naturally occurring vacuums, and that's something applicable to space, wouldn't we move over to Einsteinian gravity?
My turn to speak? Yeah?
Generally, when he asks you a question, yes.
Okay. Well, we're going back to vacuum chambers. Is that a good way to isolate the acceleration with no resistance?
No.
No. Really?
Well, I mean, you have
All
to
you're doing
artificially create a
is
vacuum.
Listen,
I
all you're
can't hear
doing
you.
by
Your
having
background's pretty bad, no globe.
Rue, listen, by changing a liquid to an air to a vacuum, all you're doing is altering the resistance against it.
Yeah.
That's
Which
not
means we
playing
can
around with
better-
gravity.
No, we can better measure acceleration because we're isolating air resistance. We're
Yeah, but-
negating air resistance.
But measuring the air resistance isn't going to allow you the when you said that the matter will fall at a 9.8 meters per second, like for the gravitation force. Well, if it's in water, it doesn't. If it's in a vacuum, it doesn't. If it's in air,
There's
doesn't.
resistance.
But it doesn't know. So what you're citing by putting in a vacuum chamber is altering the air resistance. It's not altering the rate of descent.
Yeah, we're negating that as a factor, as a variable.
It's not relevant to the point
How is it not?
because it doesn't give it doesn't prove gravity. It proves the rate of descent can be
Like I said.
manipulated by the amount of resistance against it.
All we need to accept for the purpose of this conversation is that things fall to the ground at 9.8 meters per second squared.
Yeah, but
That's
we don't.
the rate of acceleration.
What happens,
demonstrate that's only
what
true
happens
in
to
one
a... Sorry,
circumstance.
Anthony, just want to ask a question. I don't know if I've seen this or not. What happens to a helium balloon in a vacuum chamber?
In a vacuum chamber. Should go up still, shouldn't it?
Or would
No,
it go
but
up or
drop to the
down?
Oh, hang on, no, maybe go down. Hold on.
It has to go down.
Yeah, I think it goes down.
I'd be interested
Someone
to
else can
see
answer that in
that.
the chat. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'll have to Google search that.
Yeah.
Maybe someone in the
Helium
chat can
balloon
tell
will
us.
expand.
Anyway, can we like not take half an hour to get to this point?
Helium balloon will expand. It won't go up or down. It'll expand and
No,
fill
no,
the
I'm
inside.
okay, I'm assuming that we have a balloon with a structure strong enough to not just immediately explode. But, that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, it won't immediately explode if it's not overfilled, but what it will do is fill the inside of the vacuum chamber.
No,
And burst or no? It has to burst,
yeah,
right?
I'm not giving
It'll
my
burst
example
as
very
soon
concisely.
as it-
Anyway, it's off topic, so
Yeah.
I'll just save it.
Anyway, so the acceleration is 9.8 meters per second squared down, and the centrifugal force is 0.03 meters per second squared at the equator. One is very much bigger than the other. Do we agree?
You can't prove that it's there, mate.
No, this is our hypothesis, and we're testing it with experiments of weighing things at different latitudes.
Yeah, but do you understand what causation is, though? To prove gravity, you have to be literally in space.
To prove gravity, you have to be in space.
Because you have to be able to distinguish and contrast the effects of density over gravity, and the only way you can do that is being outside of the frame of reference in our case. So unless you can get into space, and generally speaking, we don't trust the people that are in space to tell us the truth because we don't even think they're in space. We think they're in a water tank somewhere doing bloody Bubbles in Space episodes that they pass off to be International Space Station moonwalk things.
Anyway, so you see that on the Earth, gravity is bigger than the centrifugal force. In a centrifuge, there's really only centrifugal force. There's no centripetal gravity.
You were given evidence against the Voss effect. You countered
centrifuge?
gravity. I countered gravity with the Quora reference, And so far, you want us to accept gravitational constant. The rate of acceleration is 9.8 meters squared.
Yeah.
We've said no because you haven't got any evidence to prove that is really the case.
Oh, really?
And we've demonstrated that you
sure.
can manipulate the rate of acceleration by changing the medium.
I'm sure if I go to YouTube and type gravity in vacuum tube, there'll be something comes up.
Go on, man. Show your screen when you do it.
One sec. Oh, in a vacuum. Where's the actual vacuum tube? Just give me a minute. I'll watch it. It's only like 2 minutes.
No problem. No globe. How are you this evening?
Doing all right. Waiting for Arwen to get on.
Oh, Arwen won't be out of bed yet. He doesn't surface till at least 11. So that's
It's pretty early show.
2 more hours. Arwen might not make the show today.
Where is it?
There's some people commenting pretty.
All right, so I'll skip the first bit where he's actually made the vacuum tube. Hold on, how do I share? One sec. Why can't I share it? It's not coming up in my application windows. Share.
If you,
Really,
get
is
it
there a
from, if you want to
particular
share,
reason
if
why
you
you
want to
don't
share
cite
your
the
screen
Cambridge
and
experiment
then
for
get
proof
it
of
ready
gravity?
so that you're happy with it, and then,
Haven't.
or if Anthony can do
Yeah.
it.
Say again.
Either if you want to share your whole screen and then just tell me when you're ready, so the public don't get it. In other words, when you're happy with what's on your screen, I'll put it up. Or if Anthony can play it, one or the other.
Yeah, Anthony played. I just posted it in the chat and started about 1:30, I think.
Oh.
Minute 25.
Bear with me. Should be that one. Right, minute 25.
Yeah, he picks it up and spins it around.
Right, so what point is this making?
He's made a vacuum tube and he's put a coin and a feather in there, and then he'll slow it down later, showing that they fall at the same rate.
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that. We're manipulating the resistance against the object by applying a vacuum. That would increase the rate of acceleration against the idea that gravity makes things fall at 9.8 meters per second.
That doesn't increase it. This is the definition, isn't it? I thought gravity is defined as in a vacuum.
You tell me. You get the science and show me what gravity is defined as.
That's a Newtonian definition, though, isn't it?
Okay.
But we don't have we don't have vacuums on Earth naturally occurring. This is something in space.
Yeah, and if it's outside of a vacuum, it'll fall slower or accelerate slower.
But you've just told us
due to resistance.
That would be big G.
No, I don't think you're understanding the difference I'm trying to make there. With
I asked you what the difference was, and you said one's applicable only in space. It doesn't apply to the Earth at all, only to later contradict yourself and say it does apply to the Earth because the Earth has mass. So you're telling me that the one is applicable in space. Well, vacuums are in space, aren't they?
Are vacuums in space?
Yeah.
Right, so big G then?
Yeah, big G everywhere.
Right, so does that mean that we ignore the Newtonian formula when we apply this mathematics?
No,
and
this
insert...
is no difference
Hold
between
on,
Einstein
I haven't
and
finished my
Newtonian.
question, Ruhif. Do we ignore the Newtonian mathematics
Welcome,
and
cheese.
insert... I still haven't finished my question. Do we insert the Einsteinian mathematics into these equations? Do they still work if we do that?
No, I'm not claiming to use Einsteinian at all.
No, I'm asking a direct question. I'll ask it a second time. We're now using vacuums, which are space references. You told me earlier that therefore we use Einsteinian gravity. So, in this equation, do we exchange the Newtonian mathematics for the Einsteinian mathematics for this example? Yes or no?
I'm not doing that, so no.
So we don't substitute them, and yet we're referencing something specifically that applies in space. That makes no sense, Ruhif. Why are we applying Newtonian gravity to something specifically that you have told me is supposed to use Einsteinian gravity out in space.
I've never said that. I said I don't understand Einsteinian gravity. You're confusing two things.
Well,
Big
if
G
you
and
don't
little.
understand Einsteinian gravity, the thing that applies to space, why are you using this this vacuum chamber as an example? I don't get it.
Right,
That's
stop.
space.
Let me interject.
Yeah.
Let me interject. What he's introducing the vacuum chamber because he made the assertion before that this was all based on the acceleration 9.8 meters squared, but he said it was done in a vacuum chamber. Now, what I've done is I've gone to the website for the known citation place for ballers, which is Wikipedia. Typed in the gravitational constant, and it gives you the maths here. And then what I've done is I've done search for the word. I've done search for the word vacuum, and we find 0 results. That implies that it isn't based on being in a vacuum. So therefore, I would say that you perhaps have your science wrong. The gravitational constant, the maths given before, is not based on being in a vacuum.
I'm relatively sure it is. I'm just going to try and find it.
Well, if it was, it would fluctuate and vary based on the amount of resistance, be it air, water, or otherwise.
It says, sorry, if you go to Gravity of Earth page, it says ignoring the effects of air resistance. So that kind of implies that it is done in a vacuum chamber.
Anthony either dropped or been kicked. I don't know which. Maybe he's just had an internet connection problem.
Yeah. Nathan, I think you're getting two pairs of things mixed up. Big G and little g, and Einsteinian and Newtonian gravity. It's not like big G is only an Einsteinian gravity thing, or little g is a Newtonian thing. They are completely different distinctions in different areas. They're separate things.
Yeah, I asked you this and got you to clarify where they were applicable.
Yeah, big G is applicable everywhere, regardless of where you are in the universe. Nothing to do with Einsteinian. We haven't even touched Einsteinian. Am I still here?
You are still here. I'm just doing various other things because one of the guests has been kicked and he keeps calling me.
There we go.
There we go.
So that number I just posted in the chat, that number I just posted in the Hangouts chat is big G. But then if we take into account, the mass of the Earth and the radius and whatever else, the size of it, that reduces to 9.8 meters per second squared.
Nath, did you hear what I said about Haunted House 2?
Did you want to add him?
No, he needs to be removed. He's the one that sniped me.
I didn't even see him join.
Moved.
Yeah.
Literally, I didn't see a Haunted House 2 join.
I didn't see anyone remove anyone.
I didn't see anybody remove anybody.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I literally didn't see anybody even join.
It's okay.
It's like the whole time looking directly.
Just be aware that someone's in the back chat right now, and I can't get back in. Well, I can get back in. I just can't be bothered trying.
No worries.
All right. I'm going to order some dinner, by the way, which will be limit my time to another 20 minutes or so.
That's probably my opportunity to do a quick link, actually, Rufus. So I might do exactly that right now. So, hope you're all enjoying the debate thus far. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and a link in the info box below the video once it is rendered. Most importantly, however, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show, as sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, and this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. There is, as I say, about 1 hour left on this live stream.
Come here. Oh, come here, Dave.
You okay, Rufus?
This is Daisy.
They're a pug.
Are we good?
No, she's a Brussels Griffin.
Oh.
Beautiful. Brussels Griffin midday.
Adorable.
Miles the Liar Davis. That's got to be a sock, right?
No, Miles is a liar.
Sure.
Anyway, so You brought up evidence. Let's go quick recite. You brought up evidence to support the idea that the Earth spins by Wolfie at Voss effect. I brought up a counter to it, which is based on real evidence that you could see that a centrifuge displaces the objects with a greater mass away from the surface because of centrifuge, and we do not see that in real world. So far, you've come back with a gravitational constant or a gravity explanation, of which you produced a Wikipedia page, which has got no evidence in it whatsoever other than rhetoric. And you haven't yet to produce any evidence to support the idea that the Earth, that gravity is a thing. And basically, Forbes says it's a fictional force. So, not Forbes, Quora.
Yeah, which has a specific meaning.
Yeah, but the point is, you haven't brought any evidence to support anything at the minute. You're just bringing rhetoric. And vacuum chambers.
I thought we agreed that there is a 9.8 meters per second squared force.
No, we didn't agree that. Why do you think that? I was really clear.
We could, you said. Why can't we? You said you accept it. We went through it about 4 or 5 times where you basically rephrased and paraphrased you saying that we should just accept this.
It's been measured a million times. This is like a year 7 science experiment. Who
cares? All you're measuring is the basic. As far as I can see, the 9.8 meters per second squared is based on free fall. It doesn't appear to be based on a vacuum. Might be wrong. Who cares? Bring evidence to show it.
I think the Wikipedia page definitely implies it's in a vacuum. It says negating air resistance.
It doesn't say the word vacuum in the document once.
No, but I mean, how do you negate air resistance?
Got space.
Where does it say that?
According to the space that you guys tell us exists.
Gravity of Earth page. Where is it?
I'm still totally confused why, when we're using space things that are out in space, like a lack of air, then why are we using this Newtonian gravity that only applies on Earth? It doesn't really make any sense to me.
No. You're getting those two things conflated, or those two pairs of things conflated.
Even if he is, you still haven't brought any evidence whatsoever. You didn't even bring the Atmos effect from Wolfie. You described it. I just happen to know what you were referring to.
I think you asked me to describe it, didn't you?
I asked you to.
Sure.
Yeah.
But my point was, I'm asking you for evidence to support the assertion that the Earth rotates, and you haven't got anything for the gravity, and you haven't even produced the Wolfie one. You've just described it. I just happen to know what it was. For those in chat that didn't know what it was, which is why they're all asking, they've got no idea what you're referring to. So really, we should have made you produce the evidence to show the Wolfie thing in any event. But
yeah, I'll post the link. Hold on.
No, post a link in the chat for those that want to see Wolfie's nonsense. But remember that Wolfie did this in a plane. Not connected to the Earth at all.
2 experiments at the same time, yeah.
Yeah, but it was done in a plane, right? It's supposed to be measuring the Earth's rotation. It's okay because the atmosphere goes with the Earth. But if it does, then I can show that the centrifuge causes objects of mass to be displaced by objects of less mass, and therefore at the surface of the Earth we should get the objects that are not the most dense, but in real world we do. No comeback, no evidence, just rhetoric. Nonsense. Bullshit.
I thought I explained what Wolfie did. And,
I don't care what you explained. I want to see the evidence that proves that there is a gravitational effect on Earth.
You want to prove that things fall down? That's all I'm using gravity for.
I want to see that gravity is the cause.
I'm calling this acceleration. I don't care what you call it.
Here we go. It's going to happen for a 5th or 6th time. Rufus is going to say, I'm calling it this. Why can't you just call it too?
What word would you like to use to call that acceleration?
Acceleration.
Let's call it displacement.
Okay. Acceleration towards the Earth. I think we can use a shortcut word, but I mean, let's just call it acceleration towards.
No. You said what word would you like to describe it? Nathan said acceleration, but I'm going to ask. Let's call it displacement.
Sure. I don't care what word we use to describe it. Honestly.
Great.
I would call it gravity. You guys can call it displacement. I don't care.
Okay.
There is
I'll
a force.
Call it displacement.
There's an acceleration towards the Earth.
Okay. No, there's a displacement towards the Earth. That was the word we're using.
Sure. There's displacement towards the Earth.
Balloons don't accelerate.
And it's an acceleration.
Helium balloons
and it's 9.8.
But helium balloons don't do that. Helium balloons don't do that. So we're now not in the gravity in the vacuum chamber. So helium balloons do not fall at that rate. Helium goes up.
They're displaced, aren't
they? Sorry, they're displaced up.
Well, yeah. If the air around it is
all right. Well, that
more
shits
dense
all over
or
your theory, doesn't it?
No swearing, please. So,
I
Rube,
missed the whole thing.
we were laughing at you.
Okay, sure. Saying, do people in the chat want me to explain the Wolfie video? Is that what we're getting at?
No, I'm just saying that evidence. You've been asked for evidence for gravity, right? And it was based on the claim that you made that Wolfie showed the Eötvös effect, which proves that the Earth is indeed spinning. You didn't show that, and the people in chat probably, well, they were asking what is the Eötvös effect, and they were getting it all spelt wrong and stuff. But nonetheless, they didn't know what you were referring to with the Eötvös effect, because it is the in phrase at the moment, but all seem to be citing it a lot. But the Eötvös effect is subject to the Birkeland currents in any event. That's why you couldn't prove causation with the experiment that Wolfie did, because it is subject to the Birkeland currents. Now, even if we negate the Birkeland currents for the sake of the discussion, I then showed you the effect of a centrifuge with regards to objects of mass, and it displaces them away from the object's centre of mass because of centrifuge. Now, if the Earth was spinning, there would be a centrifuge, and the objects of mass, which would be the densest layer of our Earth, the heaviest items in our Earth, they would be displaced away from the surface of the Earth. You haven't come back with anything credible as a response other than gravity. You have produced no evidence of gravity other than rhetoric based on a Wikipedia page, and I cited against the Wikipedia page the Quora entry, which said that it was a fictitional force, a pseudo force, otherwise fictitious nonsense made up. Father Christmas force is a better phrase. So we're at the point now where you're going to retell us for the 6th time.
To clarify, Anthony, you're calling centrifugal force a fictional force?
No. I was really clear with what I said. You brought up the gravitational page from Wikipedia, and I responded with a counter from Quora that said it was a fictitional force. There is no proof that gravity is a thing. Now, for the 6th time, you're going to tell us how we can agree that the accelerated force is 9.8 meters per second squared, or whatever it is that you're going to say. And we're going to reel you back to the point, which reminds you that there is no such thing as gravity. Can you prove that gravity is a thing?
Again, I don't care. All we have to agree on is the force, or the acceleration.
Of helium balloons going up.
Well, obviously the gravity of the air around it displaces the helium.
Oh, what about
really?
smoke?
What
about smoke? Why does smoke go up and not be affected by the massive gravitational pull of the Earth?
I don't know. I can have a guess if you like.
Yeah, we can all just have a guess about these things. We can just insert our theories and assert that they're true. We can do all these things, Rufus,
we can test them.
We're actually asking again for proof of these things.
So go on. Why does smoke go?
Proof. I'm going to. Whenever you say proof now, Nathan, I'm going to assume that you mean repeated observations that match predictions.
No, he means proof as in evidence that satisfies the scientific method.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant.
We've had this conversation many times in the last week.
Yeah.
Right.
And step 4 of the scientific method was repeated observations that match predictions.
So what's the experiment then? What's the phenomenon that we're observing in this instance?
That obviously an Eötvös effect. So we're saying that. Oh no, we'll do the latitudes. It's probably easier. That
latitudes are
things
concepts, aren't they? They're just conceptual things.
Second.
They're just concepts. They're not like real world things that we would experiment on, are they? They're just concepts.
No, we'll do a real world experiment where we have a calibration weight and then weigh it at
of a latitude line in real world, please? Can you have a real world latitude line on screen right now? Oh, right, they don't really exist in real world. They're just concepts. Concepts, man-made concepts, ideas.
Nathan, you ask me a question. I start talking. You immediately start talking again.
Yeah, that's what Rumpus said is fine to do. If you see a gross error, like when someone says, well, I'm going to take this conceptual idea and theorise about it and create a hypothesis around a conceptual idea, that's a glaring error in my opinion, so I will interrupt.
Okay, so you're rejecting the scientific method then?
No, you're basing it on a concept. Latitude lines. So I've stopped you in your tracks and gone, hold on, we're basing it on a concept. What's going on? Why would we do that?
Why would we base things on latitude lines?
On concepts, when we're studying the natural world. So that's why I asked you to bring up a picture of a latitude line in the natural habitat that it lives in. Oh, right, we don't have them, they're concepts.
It's a navigation system. I don't see that as a problem. A navigation system
isn't a study of the natural world, is it, Ruhif? Yeah?
What latitude are you at, Nathan?
Yeah, so a system is akin to a model. It's not a study of the natural world. We're not studying navigation systems. We're not studying theoretical concepts like latitude lines. Natural world. So,
So,
So what's the observed phenomenon? What are we looking at?
that things weigh differently at different locations on the Earth. And that just happens to correlate
That's not really a
quite
very
well
good
with the
hypothesis. Is this your hypothesis?
My hypothesis is that the Earth is a spinning globe. Yes.
So what
And
would
from
be the
that
phenomenon
model,
that
we
you
can make
observed
all
that makes you
sorts of
think that?
Sorry,
predictions.
model.
One of them being the
model,
Edgeworth effect
model,
and
model,
the different
model,
weights.
model. Why is it that we're now talking about another concept? Pseudoscience, Ruhif. Yeah? Natural world,
yeah.
not what
Do it.
happens on the model.
Nathan. Step 2, formulate a hypothesis.
So what's your hypothesis?
That the Earth is a globe.
That's not a hypothesis.
What? This is becoming a joke, Nathan, seriously.
Okay, let's hear it then. Let's hear your if then.
Okay, if the Earth is a
Independent
globe
and
spinning at
dependent variables,
one
please.
rotation a day and the radius is 6,371 kilometers, there will be differing centrifugal forces at the equator relative to other latitudes. We can test that.
If what? I didn't
That's
catch
step
that.
4.
If what?
If the Earth is a globe spinning and it has a certain radius and a certain angular speed, there will be a centrifugal force, and that centrifugal force will be different at different latitudes.
So your independent variable is the globe spinning?
My mathematical model.
Sorry, I've
is
said
a globe.
this twice. You're starting to piss me off again, right? I'm not interested in what the model does, right? I'm trying to establish what the experiment is, what your hypothesis is, and what your independent variable is. So, if globe spinning, therefore, if globe spinning, independent variable is globe spinning, correct?
No, I'm not having this conversation again, Nathan.
Why not? We're talking about the scientific method, and I'm pinning you down on what your independent variable is in this experiment.
Yeah,
So
and we keep
if
telling you
globe
that's not
spinning, that's what you said. If globe spins, right? That means that's your independent variable in this experiment. Silence.
Yeah, well, I'm not having this conversation again.
You don't have
Like,
to,
it's
because
pointless.
I've got you up against the wall, Ruhif. Yeah?
I had your mum up against the wall
In
last
your
night.
experiment, yeah, the if and then relationship, the independent versus dependent variables, are Earth spinning as an independent variable. You know what my next question will be? How are you going to vary it? That's why you don't want to have this conversation.
No, it just reveals the nonsensical question.
It's not a
That's all it
nonsensical
does.
question. It's only nonsensical because you can't formulate this hypothesis into the scientific method. That's why it's nonsensical. Nonsensical from you.
I can make a model that makes predictions.
How many times have I got to say it? You are pissing me off. I'm not bloody interested in your model, Ruhif. How many times do I have to say this to you? Look up the definition of science. It's not a study of models. It's a study of the natural world.
Can I interject a sec? Just changing topics slightly, Ruhif, because obviously this is only going to go in one particular way, and let's not go that way. Why is it that you've not come back with Cavendish for an experiment proof for gravity?
It looks like I've lost my panel. Do you want to add Ruhif back in on Skype?
Oh, convenient. I thought he was just sat there dumbfounded.
He was.
Right.
He's just dropped.
Okay, it's Haunted House 2 that's doing it. You may as well shut that hangout.
Okay, well, if you bring him back in on Skype, I'll start a new hangout. And battle the trolls while you two chat on Skype.
Rue?
Can't hear. Second. Yeah.
I was just making sure you were back in. Haunted
Oh
House.
no, I'm not going live.
Haunted
I'm
House
getting
2.
the kids now.
Right.
Oh, am I on air?
Yeah.
Oh, well then no, I'm going to go. I'm getting the kids dinner.
Oh, right. Sorry. I thought. So you dropped. You didn't get kicked.
No, I dropped. I told Nathan he's a cunt.
Oh, right. Okay, no worries. I'll leave you to it.
All right.
You'll have to press the red button.
Yeah, so
That's right. I didn't realise he'd actually left.
Oh, he'd
I thought he
left
got
because we
kicked.
got to the point where I'd asked him to establish his independent variable, and his independent variable was the Earth spinning. Total and utter nonsense. So he sodded off and suddenly had to feed the kids.
I know how they can manipulate Earth spin. Do
Oh yeah.
you remember in Superman when he spun around the planet
Oh
really,
yeah,
really,
he
really
spun around
fast?
the wrong way, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah,
Earth
that's how you
spin
do it,
backwards.
Nate.
He also manipulated time, didn't he? So you couldn't really have that as an independent variable because he wasn't just
Yeah.
manipulating the Earth spin; he was also manipulating time. Another concept.
Right, so do we need to do another conclusion of what we've just discovered or what we've just discussed for the people that are dumb in chat, specifically, what's the guy? Dark Star.
I can do it in 6 words. There is no proof of gravity.
Yeah, and the Eötvös effect does not prove the Earth rotation, because if it did, a centrifuge would. Dumbass Nick was saying that yeah, but the centrifuge is so slow. Doesn't matter.
Except for that big ass lump on the side of your head. Where you...
That it doesn't matter. That centrifugal force would affect the particles of density, and it would displace them against the lighter ones. We would see stuff that proves it in our atmosphere because it is non-homogeneous. It is a layer. So Nick doesn't know what he's talking about either. He's just he's a cook. He's a cook.
Yeah, well, you could just accept what he says, though, Anthony. You could just accept it.
So, Nick, I challenge you. Given that I'm not in the hangout, Nathan could set up a hangout for you to join. Why don't you join and tell us all about how it does not matter because the centrifugal force is tiny, you dumbo. Come on the panel and tell us. Let's see what evidence you've got. You can either prove Eötvös effect, gravity, who cares, but bring something with you. We all know you won't do it because you're a keyboard warrior. You're just a troll, Nick. That's all you are, a troll. Do you honestly think a force of order 0.01 to 2.5 newtons is going to push away all heavy objects out of the sky, get an education in physics? Yeah, Nick, that's exactly what would happen. Because all of the objects that are in the air are light relative to everything else around us, the rocks and all that. So there would be a disparity. Even if it wasn't at the densest layer of stuff, it would be somewhere in the atmosphere, and there would be a band where there would be displacement, and it would be caused by the slow rotation of the Earth. It would be identifiable. Physics proves it. Displacement proves it. You're a moron doing physics who doesn't realise that we do not live on a spinning Earth because displacement proves it, and the Eötvös effect is nonsense. You're a moron, Nick. I don't know how you've got through. All you have to do to pass your course, Nick, is remember what they tell you and recite it like a parrot. Coming to apply it in real world, you'll come a cropper. By the time you get 30, 35, you'll realise that most of the stuff you got taught in school, university, was parroting. Nothing more. Nick, come on the panel and tell me that I'm chatting nonsense. Don't do it from text. Bring some evidence with you as well.
He won't.
Oh, Nathan, notice who's in chat now as well since you've gone back to your 1980 channel. There's one particular person that's in there that we haven't seen for months.
No idea. Anyway, Haunted House 2 says that was fun. Thanks, Haunted.
Yeah, sniping the panel just as he was getting his toes burnt.
Oh, all is calm now. So we can chat about your carpets again.
Yeah. I can't believe that he wants to charge me for moving the old carpets out. That's robbery.
Outrageous.
Sent him on his way.
Outrageous.
Said I'll do it myself. Fuck you. I said I'll do it myself.
That's
To be honest though, it's proper dusty. Pulling up the old carpets and all the dust underneath from the rubber that's perished and just become dust.
Yeah,
Ugh.
inhale that 1960s asbestos
Hessian back
dust
stuff as well.
Nice.
All the Hessian off the back of the carpets become like dust as well, and that flares up into the atmosphere. Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, rubberized particles from the... Oh, hello, Haunted House 2. Did you want to actually say hello to us? Might actually find if you have a conversation, you enjoy yourself.
No, he's the one that's sniping everyone, but there's nobody in there to snipe.
I know. That's why I said, do you want to have a chat with me?
No, kick him
coming
out.
and gone again, so I didn't even bother kicking him.
You may as well shut that hangout because there's nobody in there and he'll sit in the back chat just waiting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will do then. I was going to leave this one up. Okay.
Yeah, let's shut that one down. But if
I will
Haunted
do, I
House
will
2
do, I'll do that
rejoins,
now.
just kick. Nummy Num, are you going to join?
Yeah,
Tell us all about the curve that we haven't found yet. Getting a bit of feedback.
Right, Nummy Num. Good man.
Ute, are you going to join? I tell you what, we could do. We can have an interlude for 3 minutes while I go and get a brew.
What? While in the middle while I'm doing something? Thanks a bunch.
Why? What are you doing?
Well, I'm setting up a new hangout, obviously, aren't I?
Oh, right,
I mean,
okay.
you'll cover me and you're off for a brew. Right.
Shout out to the porn bomber, Mr. Grim V. Not seen you for 3 months. Coincidentally, back on the scene when Nathan goes back on his 1980 channel. Shout out to Mr. Grim V.
Sent you the link in Masturbators, just so you've got it.
Why don't you talk about Arwin's theory while you wait? I don't even know what he's on about. Oh, you're on about the show from yesterday. I didn't see the show from yesterday. I was busy doing something.
Yeah, you were sorely missed.
Getting a bit of feedback, Nath.
Really?
Yeah, I'm hearing myself repeating. Oh, hang on. It could be me.
It's you. I just watched my gate come in as it does.
That should be it sorted.
Mechanical Poetry says, at Nathan Oakley, odd pictures for the stream. Sunsets and sunrises. Natural world.
Yeah, impossible on a ball. Can only
Absolutely
happen on a flat
impossible.
plane. So, that's the Etvos effect dealt with. They end up coming back with gravity. So, rotation, Etvos effect debunked. Gravity, generally debunked. Surprised he didn't come back with Cavendish. Curvature, no evidence of curvature. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. You know, when, who was it? It was Ruhif, when he brought the boats evidence the other day. And he said, look how far away the one is in the background and it's dropped behind the curve of the Earth. Was there at any point in that whole hangout, was there any reference whatsoever to refraction?
No, I don't think there was.
Isn't it funny that when they find something that fits their narrative, refraction is obsolete? But when it doesn't fit their observation, refraction is the absolute pinnacle of their argument. You can bend light any way you want when it doesn't support their model, but when it does support their model, they're very, very quiet about refraction. Wonder why that is. A bit like the word negligible. When they want negligible to be negligible, they say, well, the rotation of the Earth is so slow, it's negligible, Riley. Yeah, and the refraction of light is... But when we argue the refraction of light is negligible, it becomes distorted out of all nonsense. It becomes negligible can be anything they want it to be.
Do they claim the Earth is spinning slowly then?
Yeah, Nick Dumbass in chat claims that it's spinning so slowly that it wouldn't have a centrifugal effect. Of course it would, Nick, you retard.
Rim speed, RIM, or I think the other term is edge velocity.
Right, here we go, Nick. I'm going to ask you a question, Nick, and I want only Nick to answer in chat, and I want you to answer with a straight yes or no, because I know you're a troll and you won't join the panel, even though there's a panel there for just you, and you can join if you want to. Nick, if you get a helium balloon that's big enough, and you filled it with enough helium, and it went up and up and up, and it got to like 100,000, 200,000 feet, would the helium balloon eventually get into space? Assuming that it didn't pop. Just give us a yes or no. Would the helium balloon eventually get into space? And we're assuming that the balloon didn't pop. Theoretically speaking, would it eventually end up in space? So we'll just wait for him to give us a yes or a no answer. Hopefully it'll be within the next 10 seconds or so. Probably not even going to respond because he knows it's a gotcha.
Have you jumped into the Hangout? Otherwise,
no, should I?
If you can jump in the Hangout, just in the back chat, just in case, because we'll just get Haunted House in first guest, and then I'll be in the same boat again now I've done it all.
Right, okay, so I'll drop from this. Let me get in there first then, okay?
Oh, you're going to go actually in... You don't have to. You can stay on Skype if you want to.
No, I'll drop...
Okay, fine. If you go in the Hangout. We'll both
Okay.
battle the trolls together.
Okay, but just let me get in there before you put the link out.
Yeah. I'll just hang up this call and then see you in a second. Is it about the right time to do a link, I asked myself. Let's have a little look. Yeah, close enough. So we've got approximately 30 minutes left, maybe a little bit more on this live stream. Hope you're all enjoying the debate thus far. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside the show while it's live, and a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. Most importantly though, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the discussion and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join the panel, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show, as this increases the live audience, of course, and that in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. As I say, there is about 30 minutes left on this live stream. Right, let's stick the link out so people can actually click the link in the info box below this video. Empty at the moment. There we go. Right, let's get my fast mouse out. Right, you buggers. I'm gonna have you. Or on the other hand, we might actually get a reasonable guest. You just don't know. You're on mute, Anthony. Have you already been kicked while I did my link? Let's see. See if he drops in 10 seconds.
Oh no, I'm still here. Haunted House 2, do you want to join the back chat? Just
so we can snipe you.
Yeah. So Nick says, Sleeping Warrior, I'm making breakfast right now, but if you genuinely think you're right about the centrifugal force thing, reply to my soon-to-be posted utter debunking of your claim. Nick, just watch the video that I posted. It shows that the centrifugal force displaces the heavier items away from the center. So if we did live in a centrifuge like that, because the Earth's spinning.
There we go. Haunted House 2. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Haunted House 2. Come again. Nick, you're going to have to debunk the science that was presented, the evidence that was presented that showed the effects of a centrifuge on objects. It displaces the objects of greater mass away from the center point. It makes the objects of lighter mass come towards the center point, and in the example of the Earth, that would mean that we would have the densest layer of air not on the surface. It was really quite clear. I made it quite clear. So bring the evidence that shows that in some way that's wrong. Don't care what nonsense you're going to put on a paper. I want to see what proof you can provide. And of course, we all know that you have none.
We've got Chris Monk in the chat at the moment. Hope it is the real Chris. I'm pretty sure by his comments that it is. But he pointed out that if objects of mass attract one another, then surely you'd have all of the very light air attracted to the base of mountains. It would all pool around the most dense thing that there is in the local vicinity.
Yeah,
obviously,
and that would then have to try and displace the objects that are already there, the denser objects. It just wouldn't work. It's nonsense. If we lived in a centrifuge, that test tube thing proves that we would get all the objects of greater mass away from the surface of the Earth because they would be displaced by virtue of that centrifuge. If you don't understand it, or you think that Nick's right, then be the believer that you want to be. However, if you're empirical by nature and you believe evidence over rhetoric or nonsense, then the evidence proves that the Earth cannot be spinning, because if it was, we would not have the densest layer of air sat on the horizon.
In the interest of balance, just because Ruhif did assert this point, you can just accept the spinning ball religion if you want to.
Yeah, you can. If you're going to be a moron, you can believe that. Nothing's stopping you from being a moron. The world does need morons because it makes people like me feel a lot more valuable. So we need people like Nick.
They're the yang to our yin, aren't they?
Yes. I'm quite happy with them claiming this psychological, intelligence-based victory nonsense against me.
Because I look at the world that I see and I just see it's not got curve to it. I look at the evidence to support the idea that there's curve to it, and I realize that it's all fictitious. It comes from NASA or equivalent. When you see this evidence, it makes you look at it and think, is this a cartoon we're living in, or is it a real world? Obviously, it's meant to be the real world, yet it appears to be a cartoon.
So today we're going to have to come up with a title that's something to do with the dogmatic assertions about gravity. Yesterday it was the dogmatic assertions of Earth curve.
Well, today's title should be Et Vos Claim Debunked.
Catchy.
No, don't put G in it. Just put Et Vos. Wolfie Et Vos Claim Debunked. That's what
I didn't
it should
say
be
big
called.
G, I said catchy.
Oh, catchy. I thought you said little G.
No. Hello, Arav. Is that really you? It's too early for Arav to be here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you've got to be a bit more creative with your troll accounts. Or why not just come and say hello?
Shout out to Chris MCM. He hasn't made his presence known today, but I'm sure he's lurking.
Also, shout out to Chris Monk.
Pardon?
Shout out to Chris Monk. Crazy time in the morning for him at the moment. Probably the end of a very, very long day for him.
Mr. Grimvey, none of you will debate you live on air. That's because you porn bombed somebody and you got banned permanently because of it. I'm quite happy to debate you, Mr. Grimvey. You're another one that brings no evidence. But because of your previous behaviour, you're not allowed in. So it's not that we won't debate you, just that you're not allowed in.
Who did he porn bomb?
Well, he was responsible for the porn bombing on your channel.
I don't know that.
He admitted it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Never porn bombed anyone in his life. Yeah. You're an idiot, Grimvey. I know Grimvey was in and around about the time when me and Nathan had the chat about obfuscating points, because he was used as one of the examples where if the baller's toes are held to the fire, somebody would pipe up and start doing things like bobbity 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 bob. And that was kind of like the nails in the coffin for me. I realized that, yeah, they do this. When they're getting cornered, they will obfuscate the point to death. So me and Nathan had the chat, and we decided that we weren't going to do that anymore. We were going to challenge these ball-tards, because they're influencing people with their religion, making them believe stuff that's not true. Just like jihadists forcing religion down people's throats.
Yeah, IPS summed it up yesterday on his live stream. He said, you can have whatever religion you like, you can believe whatever you like, and I think he was talking about worshipping false idols, so it wasn't necessarily directed at heliocentrists or Christians. It was in relation to Sophia, and saying that lots of people are sending her love letters and all this kind of stuff, and it's because they're indoctrinated in a different way to worship false idols. And he said, you're more than welcome to believe whatever you like, just don't try and force me to believe it. Don't assert that it's fact.
Mercury Messenger 7 says, Sleeping Warrior, show some respect, will you? Grow up. Show some evidence, and we will.
Yeah, don't try and force your ball religion down everybody's throat.
Yeah.
You know, one of the people who, I can't believe I'm about to say this, I've actually gained a bit of respect for, is Tim Osman. You know, he is vigilant in his beliefs. So he's not going to just doggedly assert that he knows this stuff as fact. And Anthony even tried to have him on this the other day, and I laughed, because I know Tim Osman well enough to know his rhetoric. And you won't have him on that. He's at least honest in that regard. Yeah, he bandies words, and he's tricky with his words, and he's slippery, and he contradicts himself, and all those things when he's just trolling. But he's a troll, so that's to be expected. But when you really do try and pin him to the wall on these things, he just asserts that it's a belief. He accepts that. It's a belief. So with me, that's cool, so long as you accept it. It's when you start saying things like, you can just accept this. Well, no, I don't have to accept anything at all ever. When we're asking for proof of something, it's annoying.
But on the other hand, Tim Osman has done more damage in being a troll than pretty much anybody else in the...
I'll qualify my statement by saying, in this specific example, when we're talking about beliefs, So, yeah, I'm not condoning anything Tim Milsman does. Him and I have gone toe-to-toe for a significant period of time and reached the point that we realised we're both prepared to sink pretty low with each other, and then just said, right, let's just stop. We didn't say it to each other, but it was kind of just, you know, just accepted. And there's, I don't want to call it a truce, but ultimately speaking, we don't do that to each other anymore. We could sink low again. I don't think we ever will. But, you know, so in that respect, I'm as bad as he is in some ways. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about specifically his version of his account of his belief, which he admits to. And that specific single detail I have a little bit of respect for.
Well, my interpretation of that same event is that when you go to the toilet for a dump, and you turn around and you spot the sweet corn kernel in your poo.
Do we have to?
Yeah, because that little element of nugget of yellowness that you see that's pretty, that's what you're actually looking at. The rest of it's just shit.
You could just say, you know, you're just looking at a rose in a pile of turds. I mean, that's almost as gross, but not quite. One rose doesn't make it not a pile of turds or something like that. Anyway, let's not. This is a horrible analogy.
I prefer to call them a sweet corn kernel.
No, let's just stop this analogy right there. I don't like it anymore, please. Deal enough with poo with a baby here.
He has got girly ankles, though. For a guy of his age, you'd expect him to have a bit of meat on them ankles. He's got more feminine ankles than most women have.
Right, let's not ad hom Tim. He's not even here.
Yeah, who cares? He does nothing but attack me all the time. Well, not
anyway,
me, but
let's get on to a different subject, which Tim has commented on. So yesterday's show was all about the presumed curvature of football fields, and the immediate assumption and assertion by the ballers was that you have this drainage that goes and causes you to have 3 foot of relief blocking your view of something in the distance. Now, anybody who's actually looked at a football field will just laugh at that. However, they did cite Nick cited plenty of things about football fields that had drainage incorporated. Not that every football field has this, but this is the assertion and assumption by the Globers. There is definitely a way of there being curve there. So it's curve. These people, again, this is another IPS reference. They're curverts. That's what they are. They see curve where there is none there. But ultimately speaking, they went and got a load of references to show how drainage worked. And they all detailed the same thing, which is the drainage runs longitudinally along the length of the field between the goalposts. So the drainage goes to the sidelines. Not that I hadn't looked this up before I posted it. Obviously, I had a good look at what their debunking might well be. So yeah, it was laughable. They gave us all the great references for proving that the direction of travel that the guy walked along would be along the crown if it had drainage. If these guys want to assert immediately that it has, with no proof or evidence, just because there could be drainage. They just didn't quite figure out that it goes to the sidelines, which I thought was brilliant.
Well, me and Nathan had a discussion yesterday, and I said, like, before he went public with what he said yesterday, we had a conversation, and I said, well, if I go a football match, because I've been to Anfield a few times, if I stand at the side of the pitch, the pitch is above me. There is like a gully all the way around, which is for drainage.
Correct.
But if I stand at the side of the pitch, I have to look up and over a crest in the pitch. Now it's difficult to judge how big the crest is because I'm below the surface of the pitch anyway because of the gully. But I said to Nathan, be careful though, because it does. If you go to football, you do see a crown in the pitch.
There is
one.
Yeah,
but where were you when you stood there?
But if there is one, it runs longitudinally between the goalposts.
That's right. And I said, well, I was at the side, and he said, yeah, but it runs longitudinally between the goalposts. Now I've never stood behind the goal and looked and got the same perception, but from the side, you definitely do get the perception that there is a crown in the middle. How big that crown is really difficult to judge because they said to me, is it how much? And I said, I really don't know. And we ended up ringing football clubs. We rang Anfield to speak to the head groundsman. He wasn't in. But nonetheless, we rang to ask, what is the crown, if there is a crown? Because if you think about it, in modern football...
They don't have one.
Pardon?
In a lot of modern pitches, they don't have one. That's why we picked specifically Anfield, and the other one that again, because I've been there and I know, is Birmingham, because we both think there is a crown in those pitches. But a lot of modern pitches don't. They just have drainage systems, so they just drain down to pipes, and then that funnels it away. So the relief is in the pipe, not in the pitch. But on old-fashioned pitches that were professional, we're not talking about high school pitches here. But in a decent pitch, they would put a crown in because it's being used for professional purposes, so it's worth the extra expense when they build it, because you have to plan it in advance to do this. But they basically put the length of the pitch from between the goalposts slightly higher so that it drains to the sidelines. But this guy in the picture, it's not relevant to these guys whether or not they've actually gone and checked whether or not there's any relief there at all. They just assert it. Oh, there could be curve, so it's curve. There's an obstruction, right? Well, it's got to be curve. Well, I look it up and it says there's relief. So therefore, it's relief causing this guy to be obscured from the bottom up. No, guys, no. If there's going to be any relief, right, because it's a really top quality pitch, not some high school on a field, right? But if it's a top quality pitch, then it will run between the goal lines, like the guy was walking between the goal lines. But yeah, none of these guys are going to go out and actually measure it before they assert that it is actually the relief caused by the crown. Far from it. And then when we have them on the ropes on this, the commenters suddenly change their tact and start saying, have you gone out there and measured it? It's like, oh, right. So up until now, you're quite happy to assert that this has A, got relief, B, got a crown, and C, that's causing the obstruction without checking a damn thing. Once that's pointed out that that's complete nonsense, it's like, well, have you measured it? Nah, I'm using this to debunk the assertion that Ruhif made, that bottom up blocking of boats is caused by earth curve, when there's clearly other explanations for it.
But in conclusion to the point about the pitch curving away. Sorry.
That's not a troll. That's actually Anthony's dog.
Yeah, that's not a troll. I just touched him with my foot. So the modern football pitch has drainage that's all over the pitch. It's not just in the middle, and it doesn't require a bow in shape or a curve to it to make the drainage run off. What is the bigger cause of this perception of the depth of the pitch or the crown of the pitch is that the football generally gets played in like the middle of the pitch. Yeah, there are parts where it'll go towards the corners and stuff periodically, but the densest layer of traffic on the pitch is the middle. It's the middle of the goal mouth on both sides, and it's the middle of the pitch running down a corridor in the middle. That's generally where most feet running. And basically, they grow the grass longer there because it needs more shock absorption. So the grass is a little bit longer in the middle of the pitch than it is towards the edges, because it needs to have the shock absorption. And that's mainly one of the main reasons why it does have more elevation. It's not to do with the soil. Although the older pitches will have curve to them, the newer pitches basically don't need to have any curve. And they're not made that way anymore. So it appears.
You got your paper from those kids in China. I don't want to call them kids, but you know the paper I'm talking about.
I do. Bear with me. I shall find it.
So while he's looking for that, this has been explained by Arwin and Arev on several occasions with graphic depictions. Not top quality graphic depictions from Arev, admittedly, hand-drawn live, but nonetheless, he's explained this in terms of your vision and how it works. And it's just an effect of perspective. If you're looking completely out to the horizon, so you're looking at 90 degrees, then you've got technically an infinite amount above you to view in terms of your perspective that will go on forever above that 90 degree line. Below that 90 degree line, depending on your elevation, you have a very limited distance that you can see. And it causes this zone of literal invisibility where things literally disappear because the light cannot reach you from that zone. And this is summed up quite nicely in terms of one of the effects of refraction. So there are multiple effects. Cook report. Damn you, trolls.
Can't actually find my application window that I wanted to share. Bear with me. It seems to have a hissy fit when I ask it to do. Oh, is it because I've shut it? No. Ah, it's because I've minimized it. Okay. No, it isn't. Where is my application window I want to share?
Yeah, Ruhev said he had the same problem.
It's not.
Should be a Google glitch.
I'll have to open it in a different program. Close all.
So this is the paper that was essentially removed from MIT's archives after it was discussed. So this was pulled from MIT. It's not an MIT paper. Let's get that clear. However, it was referenced on the MIT website and then later removed.
And can I also remind people who it was that was challenged to remove it? It was M. Scott Veach. M. Scott Veach had brought this up, or I'd brought it up against him. And I said, listen, if you don't like this, make a complaint to them and see if they remove it. And literally the next day, one of them was gone. And then the second day, the other one was gone. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. Thankfully, I had copies of them, and I will cite them at all times. However, M. Scott Veach was the one that was directly responsible for removing these papers.
No. Correlation is not causation.
Guilty by correlation is what I'm citing.
No.
And I'm happy to stand by that.
No.
Yeah, I am. I'm happy to stand by guilty by correlation. He was challenged to do it, and it went missing the next day. And I don't put that down to coincidence. There's no such thing as a coincidence on Flat Earth.
Right.
Especially when it comes
in
to
a court
evidence.
case, you've got a man who's in a pub and he's with his mate, and his mate, they're arguing about this guy that they hate. And the one guy says, well, just go and kill him then. The following day, the guy is actually murdered. So you're telling me the guy in the pub is guilty because he was challenged to go and murder another man? Of course not.
I'm saying that there are no coincidences on Flat Earth.
That may well be the case, but let's be honest, when we're demanding proof of a very high standard, correlation cannot be taken as causation. In this instance, it's just a coincidence.
Right. Anyway, shout out to M. Scott Veach. Your daddy lied to you, mate, by the way. Go on, say it, Nathan.
His dad did lie to him. His dad told him he went to space. He came on the show and told us exactly how he was lied to by both his father and all of his father's associates. So, yeah, his dad did lie to him, to his face, and did his mates. They probably had a good chuckle about it afterwards too.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Right, so it's got it on screen, Nathan, if you want to share.
You make it a bit higher. It's just off the screen for the audience.
What do you mean, make it a bit higher?
There you go, that's it. Just scroll down so it's on screen for them. That's perfect.
I'll tell you what we'll do in this context, right? We'll do it from Ruhif's point, because Ruhif always says, yeah, but what's it referencing at 9.1, Anthony? And I sounded a bit like Paul Thingy there, but I didn't mean to. So at 9.1, or at 9, we're talking about inferior mirage. Excuse me, nobody disputes the inferior mirage. Here at 9.1, we have a typical inferior mirage. And here at 9.2, we have a reflection-only inferior mirage. However, at 9.3, every object, there is an area that the light cannot reach. This area is called the vanishing zone. Shaded in grey, when the observer is located inside the vanishing zone, the object will be invisible to the observer. When the observer is located in the vanishing zone, the object will be invisible to the observer. That's the wrong word there, isn't it? Shouldn't that be the object? When the object is located inside the vanishing zone, the object will be invisible to the observer as no light ray can reach the observer. We find the vanishing zone in our program as well. So basically, whatever you're looking at, if it goes beyond the limits of our atmosphere in terms of the way light works, it will vanish. It's that simple.
So, presumably this paper has got references to Earth curve in it, though, no?
Let's have a find out. No, there is no word curvature in this paper.
I see curve in front of me. However, we only want to find the curve corresponding to the stationary time.
Yeah, there's 4 references to the word curve. 2 of them are in that footnote. 3 of them are in that footnote. And the 4th one, for each unique curve of path light is obtained the difference between the position of the observer. I don't know what the context of this curve of light is because I've never seen light curve. However, there is no curvature on reference to the Earth.
They contextualise it. They say relative to the observer.
Say again.
Relative to the observer. I am happy always to accept that relative to the observer, light appears to curve. It doesn't. That's an impossibility. Light can be refracted. It can be refracted more than once, but it cannot curve.
Correct. Light travels in straight lines according to their model at the minute. This is the high school paper that everybody loves.
That everybody loves, do they?
Yeah.
We love it.
Bit like that word negligible. Everybody loves that word as well.
Supposed to be a really good school, so we've been told. This isn't like just some high school. It's the way it was phrased by I think it was Geostreet, but it was like it's just some high
You
school.
know,
It's like,
you remember
no,
who it was that told us about this school?
I don't.
It was Adam.
Oh yes, it was. So Iron Realm Media, big shout out to the guys at Iron Realm. They run a show on Friday night, tune in live. It's about 10, 11 p.m. UK time. Very good show, well researched. They do a lot of prep, unlike me, to actually get a show together. So yeah, well worth tuning into Iron Realm Media. But Adam, yeah, he was the one that told us exactly that. So he's a chemist by trade, but he is, you know, well versed in reading these papers. I mean, someone else went through it as well on the Globe side, so we're not just citing Adam because he's a flat earther, but he's.
You're forgetting what the connection with Adam was.
What was the connection with Adam?
Well, he's got a pre-reg, which is like a baby pharmacist that's training to be a pharmacist. He has a pre-reg working with him that is from this neck of the woods that knows this school and says that it is one of the highest reputed schools in the country.
Oh yes, I do remember now. It started off with them talking about how he was having the language barrier, and then we moved on to this paper.
Yeah, and he said that. So this is a well-known school in the area, very high repute. But also, Adam said that when they come to him, although they struggle with the language, mathematically speaking and physics speaking, they are way ahead of the third world, the modern world, or the first world, modern world. The math-wise, physics-wise, science-wise, they're way ahead of it. She can calculate stuff in her head that he has to remember how even to do it. And that's probably because he's old, but it's probably also the case that they're fresh out of university and they have a different level of understanding than what the Western world does. And in this case, probably absolutely, most definitely better than what Nick does. But in any event, she knew this school and she knew it personally, and she knew that it is a credible school and it's one of the highest prestige schools in the country. So it may only be a memorial secondary school, but it's still considered to be of high repute. So,
but we also had Philip, who, you know, I don't know, I can't confirm this, but he claims to be working with quantum computing. You know, he's not a stupid guy, and he said he went through the whole paper and on principle he couldn't find anything wrong with it. He said, yes, there's a few little errors here and there and things that wouldn't be done that way if it was being published. However, he said, on principle, I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can see that jumps off the page now that I'm looking back at it without... when you're doing stuff on the fly, you don't notice it, but when you're relaxed, you do notice it. When the observer is located inside the vanishing zone, the object will be invisible to the observer. That should be the object. When the object is located inside the vanishing zone, the object will be invisible to the observer. But, you know, who cares? It could be a language thing, could be a translation thing. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's just a nice, slightly more official than us just saying the words perspective and putting them on the end of a, is it Philip Green video? The guy with the football field, basically. You know, it's all well and good for us as flat earthers to assert this stuff, and when people say, "Oh well, you're using a non-published paper, hence MIT have removed it," it's like, well, we don't have the entire body of science behind us, so we have to take what we've got. We're YouTubers.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there is no science for a flat Earth, so it doesn't really matter whether it's whatever. Who cares what the context is? If we find something that doesn't support the official narrative by their own, there is no science for a flat Earth, so it means it's their own model is against itself in some way. So
yes,
it's not even
like,
us.
It's like when we start using the scientific method to pick apart their evidence. Well, the scientific method isn't a flat earther related thing. You know, apparently the whole body of science, science being the study of a natural world, is behind this idea. And there's no proof from science to prove we live on a spinning ball. So when we apply that yardstick to you, it's because you have asserted it, ballers being you have asserted it for 2,000 years. And you've got the whole body of science behind you.
For me, at this point in the debate, in terms of, I mean, I realise that there's no debate. I realise that there is no curve, there is no rotation, there is no gravity. You lot all think that there is, and that's why there's a debate. But for me, the debate's long since over. I come because I enjoy it. For me, it's just mental stimulation, if you want for a better phrase. But for me, the most pertinent question right now in Flat Earth is, how do you distinguish
fact from fiction? What is the thing that tells you that something's fact compared to something that tells you it's fiction?
It's acceptance. Ruhif said it. We don't, great, snip it out if you want, because he said it. It doesn't matter whether or not people pick up on it. I picked up on it. You can just accept this. Why can't you just accept this? Let's just take it as read that. Well, no. Prove it.
Yeah. Because ultimately, I mean, I always, in my mind, I can't not come back to the Santa Claus argument. We all know that Father Christmas is a fictitious character. But what makes him fictitious? There was a time we all believed that he was real. What made him real? Well, we saw him in shopping malls all over the world. Didn't realize it was a different one. We thought he was there just for us, not realizing the scale of the size of the earth. But when we were kids, we all thought Father Christmas was real. You can get evidence on CCTV in people's houses that shows that Father Christmas will put presents under trees. The dog doesn't even attack him. So it's like, well, we know that Father Christmas is real to some degree, but what makes it fictional? And the same thing can apply to the spherical nature of the earth. What makes the spherical nature of the earth fact over fiction? And fundamentally, that's the question that all adults that are in the discussion have to come to the point at. Is what you're looking at, is what you believe to be true, is what you are presented as truth, fact, or is it actually fiction? And if you choose to believe the fiction, that's fine. But most of us are beginning to realize that it's nonsensical. It's ISS stuff's all nonsense. There is no space up there the way we're told. It is ridiculous.
And with that, I think I'm going to end the show. First and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you've not done so already, be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!